Oh boy, what is up? Welcome in to another post Loons post game show that unfortunately comes after yet another Minnesota United defeat. This time at home in front of fans for the first time at Allianz Field in 13 or no more than 13 months because it was October of 2019. So you're looking at a year and a half.
Yeah.
First time in front of fans, and unfortunately the 4,000 plus that were at Allianz didn't get a ton to cheer for as Minnesota United falls to RSL 2-1 in their home opener. Joining me to break it all down, E Pluribus Lunum's Eli Hoff, great friend of 10,000 pitches and great friend of mine as well. Eli, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well, Jeremy. It feels good to be back. I wish we had something a little bit more positive to talk about, but soccer, I guess. And, for the fans who were in the stadium tonight, I feel like they were perhaps at least peripherally happy that they got to watch Minnesota United play in person, even if it was a disappointing result. But yeah, soccer's back. We can't complain too much, except for in the next 45 minutes to an hour, however long we go, in which we will probably complain frequently.
Exactly. And I do want to start there before we actually get into the match. It's interesting, like the intimate environment at Allianz Field and the differences you saw in the fan reactions. You definitely sensed more of that frustration, could actually hear specific things that were being yelled from the crowd onto the pitch. In those types of environments, if there's 20,000 there and there's a full wonder wall, you're still getting the supporter section trying to get that team going and trying to get push for that goal, push for that equalizer. But with that intimate environment, you really got a sense of just how frustrated these fans were with just how the game was progressing.
I agree, and I think I got even more of that just being on Twitter for the game. That
Yeah.
and obviously it's a lot easier to voice your dissatisfaction in a tweet. But you heard the boos, and I don't think I think a lot of the boos at the end were obviously directed at the RSL time wasting tactics, if you want to call them that. But I think there was audible disappointment, especially in just the lack of connection with Juan Agudelo up top, and just United's inability to get much going in the box. Like the fans seemed dissatisfied with that, and I think rightfully so.
Definitely. So let's get into this here. Like we said, 2-1 Loons loss. They fall to, it's their second straight loss to open the season. Not where you want to be, not where you would project this team to be at this point. It is still early, but, you just look at the stats here. I mean, 23 shots, 2 on target. That's really the thing that stands out most is just the amount of opportunities that this team had, like the amount of shots that they were able to get, but either they went wide, they were blocked. It just seemed like they just weren't able to get anything solid, whether that was from the quality of shots that were taken, the shot selection itself, RSL's, packing it in, pack line defense, whatever it was. It just seemed like Minnesota United could just, there wasn't really any, especially in situations where you think that's okay, this is going to be it. In Minnesota United's last 2 seasons, we've seen them take advantage of these opportunities, right? And you get that sense, you become accustomed to thinking like, okay, this ball is going to end up in the back of the net. And it just didn't happen tonight.
No, it didn't. And it was interesting to watch the progression of chances as the game went on, because right away, I think this was even like the 4th minute or so, Roman Metner had the ball down in the right wing. He had taken it all the way down, where usually, we see a lot of Roman crosses. That's just like part of the Minnesota United offense. And he got doubled. Drew 2 defenders to him, and he lost the ball right away. Didn't even get a chance to fire off even just like a terrible cross. Like he was doubled right away. They just shut it down. And that was interesting because like it showed adjustment to the Minnesota United offense from RSL, which teams haven't always showed in the past. And obviously you expect at the start of every season that teams are going to have adjusted to what you did the last season. Like that's just kind of what's going to happen. But they immediately took away kind of that flank. So there's more opportunity in the middle then, because as a defense, unless you're going to park about 6 at the back, it's impossible to cover the entire field. So I thought there were more opportunities early on going through the middle, but those weren't really happening. And you brought up shot selection. It feels like a basketball talking point, but shot selection was a massive factor for Minnesota. The 23 shots, I think you said it was 2 on target. That's not a good ratio by any means.
No, it's not.
Like not even close to the ratio you want. It felt like so many of those shots, at least half happened off the volley or off the bounce or otherwise with the ball airborne. Again, those shots are going to happen. Those are great opportunities. That's how Robin Lod scored. But they're more difficult shots. They're just inherently less accurate. And Minnesota United is a team that thrives off of creating chaos. Whether that's fluid attacking and counterattacking type stuff where you don't really have positions, you just have, a player bringing the ball up in the middle and two people he can pass to on either side, and it doesn't matter right wing, left wing, central midfielder, fullback, any of that. That's just players. Or, in set pieces, they tend to do well in set pieces. Or the most chaotic situation in soccer is when the ball is bouncing loose in the box and nobody knows where it's going to go. And the easiest way to do that is after a save, when the keeper can't control a save and it bounces back out for somebody else to poke in. And that doesn't happen when you don't put the ball on target. If the goalkeeper's not having to do anything, you're not going to get that kind of chaos. And Minnesota United didn't put it on target. They didn't get that kind of chaos. And I think that was a contributing factor. So many shots from distance. We've seen him hit that. Guys like Jan Gregus can hit from there. Guys like Reynoso can hit from there. Even Hassani Dotson when he comes on late. But those are not analytically friendly shots. Those are the shots that you take when you're up 1-0 and, oh, we got a banger, we're up 2-0 now. You can't be taking those when it's a 0-0, 1-0, 2-0 game.
Yep. And so I've been following this team since 2018. That was the first season I saw Minnesota United. I saw a lot of similarities tonight that I saw in that 2018 team, especially in the method that they attacked. Push it up the wing, cross it in. Push it up the wing, cross it in. Push it up the wing, cross it in. Time and time again. Where and even in 2019 that was the case a lot, but last year, especially after the addition of Manuel Reynoso, you definitely saw a more fluid attack, a more well-rounded attack, only really pushing up the wing and crossing it in when the situation called for it. The thing though is, Eli, that method actually worked tonight when you talk about what you want to accomplish with doing that. Balls fell at the feet of Minnesota United players. A-plus chances inside the box, but as we mentioned, a lot were blocked, a lot went wide, just couldn't put the biscuit in the basket when it came down to it.
Yeah, and what I found interesting as far as just issues go was rather generically Minnesota United's touch. That there were a lot of passes, especially that Reynoso was sending in, that were good passes, that were accurate passes, and were just being mishandled. And by mishandled, I mean more like misfooted once they were received. Like, Minnesota United players seemed unable to receive a pass, turn, and then fire off another pass or make a dribble or get a shot off. And it was a lot of passes coming out of the defense, a lot of passes that Reynoso was sending. He had a lot of really nice low through balls. Those are super hard to place. But they're super valuable too because they're right at a player's foot. Like, a throw ball that hits you in your dominant shooting foot is like one of the easiest finishes in the sport of soccer, besides like a penalty. And Minnesota United players weren't taking them like that. Like those passes weren't connecting, and so that's a factor as well. I don't think it's necessarily Reynoso's fault because again they seemed largely accurate, but Juan Agudalo's touch was not impressive up there at all. Obviously, strikers are often only as good as their support, so it's wrong to place too much blame there. But I wasn't seeing a lot of great runs from him. He wasn't making himself available or open to passes. My take with strikers that I'll say over and over until I'm blue in the face is that it's positioning that matters. Because every striker can more or less convert chances at the same level. It's about, an open chance is easier than a difficult one. So if you can get yourself open as a striker to receive a ball, it's going to be way easier for you, and that just wasn't happening. So, yeah, I think a lot of frustration in the attack. Part of what also was so successful last year was Reynoso and Kevin Molino combining and dribbling all over the pitch and playing off of each other and stuff. There's only one half of that combination, and that gives Reynoso a little bit more freedom, yes, but also more responsibility. Towards the end of the game, if you watch the possession that led to Robin Lod's goal, it was a full build-up possession, which is interesting because we don't see that all the time from Minnesota United. But who came back to get the ball? Reynoso came back to the center circle to get the ball, brought it up, slipped through a through ball to Hassani Dotson, who then crossed it into Mcmaster. And Mcmaster had a heck of an assist on that. Like, we have to credit him for that. That was a fantastic assist. But it's Reynoso tracking back and hitting that through ball to Dotson that makes that play happen. So we see, when that works, it creates a goal. When it doesn't work, we get, 94 other minutes of pretty meh attacking soccer.
you're just tuning in, this is Post Loons, presented by 10,000 Pitches, and also brought to you by our friends at Ninth Street Soccer and Coffee. Book field time, sign up for $5 pickup, or learn all about Ninth Street Soccer and Coffee at ninthstreetmpls.com. They will also have quite a few Loons watch parties over the course of the season too. So definitely hit up ninthstreetmpls.com for all of that info. Derek and the guys at Ninth Street are awesome. So if you're looking to play some rec soccer or just, go to an environment that is really cool for soccer supporters and soccer players alike, go to ninthstreetmpls.com to learn more about Ninth Street Soccer and Coffee. But getting back to the match here, Eli, let's go kind of chronologically here through the main points of the match and kind of what we saw, and what influenced kind of the outcome that we saw here tonight. So it all started in the 4th minute. Now this was kind of the first of those, push it up the wing, cross it in. We saw that over again in this match, and it started in the 4th minute. Again, across from Mcmaster, finds the feet of Reynoso, fires a shot. It's well wide, but at this early point of the match, you're like, all right, we're getting some good push, obviously getting out on the front foot, just like what happened in the Seattle match. And things are looking good for Minnesota United, as just in these first few minutes, getting on the front foot and getting a decent scoring chance right off the bat.
Yeah, I think one of the things I noticed early, and it was something that I probably noticed more just because I was paying attention to it, was the positioning of Jukka Raitala playing center back. Because anytime you have a fullback filling in at center back, there's going to be some awkwardness. Like those are positions that require very different skill sets. And early on, he was off there. And again, I think that's to be expected going in. We don't know how planned out it was for him to be starting there instead of Brent Kallman, or how early that DeBossi being out was decided among the team. So for all we know, this could have been decided today that he was filling in there. I would assume there's been more planning, but who knows? Mm-hmm. And early on, I think this was about the 4th minute. It was shortly after that. Matt Ross, a broadcast was panning away. I saw Will Trapp coming over and giving Raitala a little lecture, pointing him and telling him to get back. And then after that, if you look at the average positioning data from the game, Raitala was the farthest back defender over and over for Minnesota United, which I think is both good and bad. One, it's good because you'd rather have him be too far back than too far forward, because we saw with that first goal what overcommitment going forward can do, especially with center backs. But also, I think that showed kind of a more cautious approach from him. But it meant he was contributing less to the attack. And one thing that Minnesota United's been blessed to have in the past is center backs who can contribute to the attack at times. Boxy's known for having the occasional adventure forward that usually ends pretty well, especially against the Earthquakes, beating man marking. Even Aikupara, who knows when we'll see him again. But he's able to start a lot of counterattacks. And when Ozzy Alonso isn't there, Minnesota United loses that 6 who can stop the other team's possession and start one of Minnesota United's own. And so that requires more from the center backs, because Will Trapp is good but doesn't quite do that. So I think that was evident pretty early in the game, just kind of some disconnect on the defensive end.
Well, and to the point about Raitala, I mean, that's the exact same thing we saw with Jose Aja last year playing that center back position for the first time. You saw Michael Boxall and him sort of definitely not being on the same page at times, and directly negatively influencing that very first match in the MLS's back tournament last year, right? So there are some growing pains when it comes to inserting a new center back, and we've seen that with Minnesota United. But in the case of Jose Aja, with more matches, more consistent time on the pitch, he grew into a stellar center back for Minnesota United. Obviously, that was before the insertion of Bakaye Debasi, but I thought he did really well. So all it takes is consistent time on the pitch. Now, hopefully, speaking of Bakaye Debasi, hopefully we get him back sooner rather than later, so we can get reinserted into this back line and sort of solidify that. But at the same time, it really is a little bit unrealistic to expect a guy like Raitala to come in first match cold and just be everywhere he needs to be all the time and make that kind of impact right off the bat. It just doesn't happen, right?
Absolutely, and it's important to note that Raitala didn't have a bad game by any means.
No, he
played it a little bit more. Played it a little bit more cautious, but honestly, I think that's what you prefer. And that seemed like it was what Will Trapp told them on the field, and I'm sure Adrian Heath echoed that as well. If you're gonna be wrong on position, be wrong defensively. So I think, especially when you look at if you're defenders who had rougher games, I think it was the defender out on the left side of Raitala who had a rougher game, and that obviously there's more strain on that left side of Minnesota United's defense. Teams have caught on to Chase Gasper not being a top quality left back. I I guess we'll jump to this as one of the talking points. I know it probably should come up a little bit later in the chronology, but I don't think Gasper has regressed this year or is really playing that much worse. I think teams have realized that his positioning can be off a little bit, that he's not the fastest fullback in the world, and are exploiting that, are sending mismatches his way, are sending 2-3 players down that left side. And it gets worse when Gasper's having to try to compensate for a center back too, or feels like he's having to compensate. And when a center back who's not the most experienced is having to compensate for that. I think, now I'm struggling to remember, but I want to say 2 of the goals in the Seattle game were ones that just looked like they were targeting that flank. And then, the second RSL goal especially was targeting that tonight. And I think the first one, that's a factor. So I think that's a bigger picture thing, that Debasi coming back will be really big to help just stabilize that left side.
Yeah, and speaking of those 2 goals that you're talking about, it was the 2 Rui Diaz goals for Seattle.
Yes.
Coleman got a lot of the direct blame for that. Pretty deserved. I mean, he was the man who was marking Rui Diaz there, but that's also Chase Gasper's side as well. So a little of that blame does have to go to Chase Gasper. And then you see tonight the 2 RSL goals can be directly attributed to bad touches from Chase Gasper. So it's definitely not a great correlation, definitely not a great pattern that we are seeing, where teams, as you said, this is probably in the strategy of teams that are playing Minnesota United to attack that flank, especially without Bakaye Debasi there, especially without an Iko Para there, seeing that as a very weak point for Minnesota United, and it is paying dividends for, at least in the early going, for those opposing clubs.
Yeah, and what was interesting about tonight was Minnesota United getting beat twice in transition, because they've, at least last year, intended to be a team a lot more that would be getting back pretty well, would have a strong defensive block. I know I talked a lot, especially during the MLS's back tournament last year, about how compact and good that defensive 4-4-2 was, and that's not what's happening this year. Last year, it was Minnesota United that was the team that was beating people off the counter. In counterattacks, just expose defenders' one-on-one liabilities. With Chase Gasper, when he commits too far forward in transition, he's not able to have that recovery speed. He's fine speed-wise. It's not like he's too slow to be a fullback. He's fine. But, we saw in that first goal that, he caught up but was not in a position to do much defensively, and then, had an awkward touch of the ball and it contributed to a goal. He's not able to get back and recover or cover a winger as easily as some other fullbacks might be. So it will be interesting to see how and if Minnesota United adjust that. I know Boxall originally started out playing left center back because it was Iko Para on the right, I think. Now I might be imagining that, but I think that was the arrangement for a while. So it would be interesting, is there merit to putting Boxall at left center back and then leaving the other center back to Roman Meyer, who's a little bit stronger all-around fullback on that side, and I think show a little bit better decision-making in some of his stuff. It will be interesting, but obviously Debasi coming back helps the back line a lot as well when that happens.
I want to pick your brain about something, and this is the second week in a row we're kind of throwing the chronology straight out into, and that's totally fine. But we've seen in years past, the presence of Ozzie Alonso being a main factor in mitigating teams' attacks before they even really start, right? Now it's Will Trapp playing the 6, and we've kind of seen what has happened to Minnesota United in these first 2 matches. Now, again, we've discussed the issues on the left side of the back line, but would the presence of an Ozzie Alonso, prime Ozzie Alonso, help kind of mitigate some of these attacks and kind of take some of that pressure off the back line? And I know that's not necessarily Will Trapp's style, but would that be a decision that you would consider making if you're Adrian Heath, considering the flaws that you were seeing on your back line right now?
I think if you're Adrian Heath, you kind of have to, because something obviously isn't working defensively. And again, maybe Debasi helps with that, but there's been a big difference in the roles that Ozzie Alonso played last year and in years past, and Will Trapp is playing so far this year. One of them just being like positioning and how deep they are. Ozzie Alonso was a very defensive number 6. I remember making the case that he was, essentially a central playing fullback, like positioning level wise last year for Minnesota United. That, yeah, sure, he still got forward, but he really operated as a 5th defender, just a center back who got forward, just based on his average positioning from every game, how often he would dip in between that back line, whether that was centrally or on the either side of one of the center backs. And that was really huge. That was part of what, quote unquote, fixed Minnesota United's defense, was Ozzie being able to do that. Will Trapp doesn't do that as much. I don't remember, and I didn't watch him super closely tonight, but I don't remember any possessions where, he dipped in between the center backs to stop a possession, or where he was really kickstarting one. And when you look at his average positioning, he and Jan Gregus weren't almost the same spot, which basically tells you that Will Trapp is another number 8. Okay, that's fine, but it's different than what we saw last year, because Ozzie Alonso was very much a 6, while Jan Gregus was the 8. And that kind of double pivot, there's a reason why the double pivot is used so often. It's a 6 and an 8, a defensive midfielder and one who gets forward more. It works perfectly. But I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, but it's certainly a difference. And I do think it is contributing. I think there's also a tendency, maybe in that first goal, because Will Trapp was the farthest defender back, that's kind of an unfair situation for him to be in. Because while he's technically the more defensive-minded midfielder, he's not who I would necessarily want trying to stop that kind of counterattack situation or in a one-on-one duel like that. We talked about this a little bit on air before we went live about who you would want to have back there, and I really don't understand why it wasn't Raitala back there. Wikipedia has Raitala at 5'11", which seems tall to me, or taller than he actually is. I don't think he's enough of an aerial threat to merit having him all the way forward. He's a fullback playing center back. That's the type of player who you want all the way back, and there should be 2 back there, and I don't know. I'll have to watch that kind of set piece that led to that over again.
It felt like a stoppage time corner kick almost, where everybody's pushed up, right? And it's the way the ball caromed off the Metner shot from about, I don't know, it was like 25, 30 yards out, whatever it was. I mean, you have to have guys back, right? When you don't have guys back, you see what can happen. I mean, it was a perfect carom that led to a perfect counterattack, but that also is the type of thing that can happen, and having guys back obviously can account for something like that happening. Now, I will say, I actually was pretty, I would say impressed, but the track back was pretty good. In terms of the recovery was pretty good for Minnesota United's defense. And then the aforementioned bad touch from Chase Gasper leads to the goal when he should have just booted it out of the attacking zone anyways. But it just felt like, I agree with you, Eli, it felt like an ill-timed sort of all-out corner kick and they just got caught in the exact right way at the exact right time because of it.
Yeah, and it is interesting to see how many were committed forward, but what that leads to is that, yes, it was kind of a lucky ricochet that led to a good counter, but those good counters are made better when the attacking team has numbers. And I believe that if you look at, I think RSL had 5 attackers going to Minnesota United's 3 tracking back. And I will say, from my limited playing experience, and I think anyone who has kicked a soccer ball can reason it, it is easier to be an attacker running forward than a defender chasing to catch up every single time. It is hard to, as a defender, to recover, get in front of the ball, and make a tackle that will not get you yellow, red carded, or otherwise commit an infraction. That's just inherently difficult. So RSL just getting that many numbers, that's, analytically friendly. 5-on-3s probably turn out pretty good a good amount of the time. So obviously it's a lucky bounce, but sometimes it's better to be lucky than good, and in this case RSL was lucky and good, and Minnesota United had a questionable touch. That's a good opportunity.
Our good friend Jacob Schneider says, shake my head, Eli's head had something on it. Has something on it.
Interesting. Hello, Jacob.
I didn't comment on this before, but I love the salad, Eli. I love that. What influenced the change, and how long have you had that?
I've been blonde since about January, and just went with kind of letting it curl and go up top. I was tired of trying to keep it straight and go into the side, so I decided to just kind of
roll with it, right?
Let it go.
Go with the
I'm about to. I'm at a bad time to be doing something that has my camera on. I was supposed to get a haircut yesterday and couldn't find the time, so it'll come down a little bit and get it a little touched up color wise. But
That's okay.
yeah,
I was
it's a
going to
thing
shave
that
today.
happens.
It didn't happen. So I get it. I
Yeah,
get it. Speaking
yeah.
of questions, comments, if you have any questions, comments about the game, questions for me and Eli, just overall thoughts, opinions, takes, definitely drop them in the chat, and we'll address them on the air. Jake, we're not going to address any more of your comments on Eli's hair moving forward. But
I
if
can't even
anybody
see him,
else
Jacob.
has,
I can't even see him.
now, if anybody else has questions or comments about Eli's hair, we may address them moving forward. But Jake, we already read your comments, so we're going to move on from that. So right before halftime, I mean, we get what, 41st minutes, another RSL goal, just another situation where it's a bad touch from Chase Gasper, or not even bad touch. It was a pass back that to nobody.
Mm-hmm.
That led to basically the easiest goal of the night, obviously for RSL. Just basically a 2-on-none there. Anything else besides the bad pass from Gasper that you saw there, Eli?
It was largely the Gasper pass because I don't think that chance of that goal happens with that. So while like it is difficult and unfortunate at times to like place the blame on one player or one situation, it's kind of hard not to in that event. I think that's really all there is to it because that's not something that you would expect your starting left back to do. Again, it's about RSL putting heat on him and putting him in situations where he has to make plays, where he has to make decisions, where he has to test himself and get back and get forward and do all of that. And again, when a player is tested like that, they're tested like that for a reason. Teams catch on to those. Teams watch film. They prepare for who they're going to be facing as far as the backline goes, and that left side is the weak side right now. So teams are going to target that, and it's not going to stop with these two games. Teams are going to continue and like probably go after it even more if they're seeing that it worked for Seattle. Again, I think it's a testament to what teams are seeing that it was 2 Rui Diaz goals for Seattle because he's one of the best strikers, the best in MLS, and he knows where his spots are. His good strikers position themselves well, so he knows that targeting that side is going to be where he's going to get his better opportunities. So that's where he's going to do it.
I just thought a lot of this first half from Minnesota United, they were just trying to be too cute, both offensively and defensively, trying to make flashy plays, trying to, flashy shots, flashy passes. It's get the ball out of the zone and get the ball on net, right? Like that really is to me what it came down to, trying to do too much almost as opposed to just trying to do the simple things. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I certainly agree, and I think a lot of it came down to just settling for chip type shots, placement type shots outside of the box when that wasn't necessary. And I think a lot of players were part of that. I think the lack of connection between Reynoso and Agudelo was part of that. There was no pass between them in either direction in the entire first half. And actually, I'm curious now to see how many they had.
Well, to that point, in these first 2 matches, I feel like if you're Emmanuel Reynoso through these 2 matches, you have to be extremely frustrated. I mean, you're basically surrounded by a front 4 of guys that aren't in their primary spots, that aren't in their most comfortable spots, that aren't in the spots that you've trained with them in all preseason. You don't have the guys with you, don't have the positioning with you. So it's tough to develop and maintain any sort of chemistry when I get that it's injury, it's because of injuries, but Adrian Heath is having to kind of shuffle, mix and match along that front line for Minnesota United. And it's just there's no chemistry there, and it's obvious there's no chemistry there right now.
Absolutely, especially when you look at how good the chemistry was last year between Reynoso and Molino. This is an attack that really, really misses Kevin Molino. He was so key to what they did last year, and obviously Reynoso became hot at the right time with the 7 assists in the playoffs, whatever ridiculous, or not, however many assists he had in the playoffs. That was just a ridiculous streak of passing to people who scored. Yeah. And obviously that helped, but Kevin Molino makes so much of that happen, and they had such a great chemistry and dynamic together. that's missing. I just looked at the numbers. It was 3 passes from Reynoso to Agudelo. That's not what you want between your number 10 going to your striker. That's not a functioning attack. That's not a healthy attack, especially when going wide and sending in crosses and stuff. Yes, that's a strategy that sometimes works, but that's kind of an inefficient strategy, because I think everyone will argue that going up the middle and shooting from a central location gives you more of the goal to work with. And Absolutely. There were a lot of just those shots from distance. Like you said, they come too cute because they're settling. And this isn't the NBA where perimeter shots are a good thing. Like I look at it as if I compare a lot of soccer to basketball because there are a lot of similarities and they can be viewed through a lot of the same lenses. The shots that Minnesota United was taking were just like open mid-range jumpers. So when they go in, they look real pretty. But they're analytically poor shots because they're just difficult. They're farther away. Even if they're open, that doesn't mean it's a good shot. So I think that was kind of the big factor, was not pushing far enough forward in attack before shooting.
It just seemed that the pattern continued in the second half. Another A-plus opportunity, more A-plus opportunity, courtesy of Roman Mcmaster. I mean, Mcmaster could have had 6 assists tonight. The way he was distributing and the way he was developing quality chances that just didn't end up in the back of the net from Minnesota United. It seemed like he was the focal point. He was the catalyst of any legitimate chances that this team had offensively, mainly from crossing on the right side, but still it seemed to all start with him.
It really did, and actually, we've talked negatively about Chase Gasper a lot. But he had a fantastic cross. I think it was the first half that I think fell right to Robin Laud's foot, like at the penalty spot. It was just beautifully placed, especially because there was no attacking movement. That's another problem. When you're going to have somebody sending crosses in, you need your attackers to be cutting and making movements to free themselves from attackers or move into space or pull guys out of position, because it's a lot harder to just find stationary targets. That's another discussion. But yeah, I think the distribution from Roman was fantastic. Again, they doubled him early on, and they did that for a reason, because he's a threat with those crosses. And he finds ways into space. He's a fantastic fullback, one of the best in MLS. And he showed why tonight he was a redeeming factor in the attack.
A couple minutes after that, golden chance for RSL, more chaos in front of goal. Ended up being blown dead for offside. Could have, maybe should have been 3-0 at that point. Then 5 minutes later, Dane St. Clair keeps it 2-0, lays all the way out to stop a Justin Glad header off an RSL corner. Dane played amazing again tonight. I mean, he has been one of, if not the most consistent, piece for Minnesota United over the last 2 seasons.
He has. And actually, I want to talk about those 2 plays that you just mentioned, because I think they exemplify a lot about this team. First, with that corner that led to the Dane St. Clair save. It was a fantastic save, and Dane's been fantastic and deserves no blame for what happened tonight. But off of that corner, I watched the replay back because it looked like a very clean header that forced that save from Dane St. Clair. And you wonder, well, how does that header happen off a set piece? That's exactly what you're trying to avoid. Let him squeeze off a header that's going to go over the bar or something. You don't want them to put something on target. And it was actually great set piece defense. Watching it back, I'm not really sure how Justin Glad got his head so clean. That was just a great play from RSL. So I don't think that chance. Obviously, if you're RSL, you're probably like, dang, that really could have been 3-0. You can't blame Minnesota too much for giving that one up. The chance before, though, that really should have been 3-0. One of the more interesting defensive bailouts, with the player just like having curled up on the goal line and then having the shot kicked into him and him being offside. It works. It's questionable defense, but it works. But before that, you saw a lot of the miscommunication or lack of chemistry, whatever you want to call it, with the defense. Because the ball was out on the far wing, the right wing, and you had 3 Minnesota United defenders bite towards the ball. So they were still tracking back, but they were moving towards the ball. RSL had 3 attackers who, again, attackers tend to be smart people who find space. Those attackers moved, 3 attackers moved behind the 3 defenders who were going to the ball. Yeah. So now all of a sudden, you had 3 wide open targets. You had Roman Mcmaster, who recognized what was happening and was behind all those attackers, but trailing on the play. I don't know if that's a positioning thing for him, so him trying to cover. but he's going to be able to do anything there. Anytime you have three defenders moving towards the goal without a single, three attackers moving towards the goal without a single defender in front of them, that's a great chance. So yeah, that one very much should have been 3-0. United's lucky to have not conceded there, and by lucky, they're very lucky because RSL blew that chance for themselves by playing goalkeeper in an offside position.
59th minute underlines a point we sort of already touched on. Metnair. Again, of course, it's Metnair. Crosses into the box. Agudelo can't quite turn on the ball. Pops up a weak shot well over the bar. I was going to sneeze there. I didn't sneeze. Just kind of underlines the night that Agudelo had. Just, couldn't quite find his footing, couldn't quite just find his way into any sort of excellent chance. That was his best shot of the night. But again, it was just a pop-up, weak shot over the bar. And that's when really I think the frustration really started to set in with the Minnesota United faithful. I think Jacob Schneider tweeted something that he really started to hear some kind of negative comments from the fans directed toward Agudelo, but more directed toward the team, just, again, another chance, another quality chance that went astray. You're still down 2-0 at that point. Just another sort of lost opportunity there.
And this was the point where I think I tweeted right around this time from the ePlayerbus account, Adrien Unu cannot be ready fast enough for this team because they need a striker. And I really think he's going to be good because I think he fills sort of what we didn't see from Agudelo tonight. He's a striker who contribute a little, who can, and this is, I haven't watched any tape on him, I should clarify this. This is all what I gather from scouting reports and numbers I've seen on him. But it seems like he can contribute to build-up play, which is good for that kind of counter-attacking stuff, because that also might help not have Reynoso be so isolated. If they can work together a little bit more, I think that creates a really good dynamic between your number 10 and your number 9. Additionally, he's good just defensively and positioning-wise, which Agudelo put a little bit of pressure on tonight that was good, but the engine just wasn't there for him. And I'm not one to ever criticize players' effort because we don't know how healthy they are and what goes into all that and what they've been told. But he wasn't playing that mobile up top. And again, that's fine, but it's not pressure up there. He's not finding those gaps. One thing that I loved with Luis Amaria last year was how often he'd make far post runs and just make these really, really nice runs that were like so easy for attackers to find with crosses, because a crosser is only as good as the people they're passing to. If they have an open cross, that's easier than a not open cross. It's a lot of these just really simple things that strikers can do that Agudelo wasn't doing tonight, and I think Unu will be able to bring to the table once he arrives and is acclimated to the team, and who knows what he has to go through with COVID protocols and all of that. But
I do think it's a shame that Ramon Abila is really struggling with the hip issue right now. He had mentioned today, he put out a clarification on his Instagram story today that the hip necessarily isn't still injured at this point, but being that Lumen Field where they played last week is a turf field, it did sort of develop a lot of soreness and was a little bit difficult for him to kind of recover from that. So that's why he wasn't in the 18 today. But still, I mean, he would have been kind of that perfect guy to have in there for these first however many matches until Adrien Unu can get fully fit and fully ready to go, kind of pass all the protocols he needs to pass because of that chemistry that he's already built with Reynoso, because of the quality that we saw just in the few minutes that he was on the field against Seattle. I mean, having him for 75 plus there, 75 plus tonight, that in and of itself could have been a huge difference maker for Minnesota United, but alas, it's not the case.
No, and the answer at striker will determine a lot for this team going forward, because it's been a hole in both the games so far. And I honestly, the Robin Lod as a fall strategy, I haven't hated it. I didn't hate it last year. I didn't really hate it against Seattle. There are better options. There will be better things that happen. But I think if Minnesota United can find the answer in Unu, who I think really will be that answer, that will be big for this team going forward, because a lot of these teams that have those elite level strikers, who the Rui Diaz's, the Alan Politos, those strikers can just command attention sometimes, that frees up opportunities for your other attackers too. So the kind of gravity that Unu is going to bring, I think, will be, if nothing else, that alone will help with this team.
I think what it comes down to with Minnesota United too is, and I said this in the season, I'm like, if they get a high quality left winger, they don't necessarily need a high quality striker. We saw that last season with what they were able to do with kind of the rotating striker position that they had. It didn't really matter because they had Kevin Molino on the left wing, right? And I just think this team, now any team, I guess, would struggle in this situation too. If you don't have a quality striker and you don't have a quality left winger, and you have both those problems happening, and you run that 4-2-3-1 that Adrian Heath runs, you are going to struggle to put the ball in the net. That's really what it comes down to. And they have major holes, major gaps at both positions right now. Obviously, the insertion of Adrian Hunou is, kind of the plan to those issues. But it really is just me. It's just that simple that craters now at both those positions, and that's really hard to overcome.
It makes me wonder. I've liked the 4-2-3-1 generally that Heath deploys, but as I was watching the game tonight, I was talking myself more and more into a pretty fluid 4-3-3. You keep the back four the same. It's Metner, Boxall, Dabasi when he's healthy, Gasper for now. But with the midfield, because Trapp and Gregus seem to be playing as two number 8s, what if you make that a 3-man midfield and you bring in Ozzy Alonso at the 6? You get everything you had from him last year. It was a look that Adrian Heath, I should say, tried for a lot last year, but didn't quite come off because Hassani Dotson can be a little awkward playing as that 8 because he's not really a 6, not really an 8. I don't know if anyone can really say what Hassani Dotson's best role is because I don't know if we've ever seen him play 3 consecutive games in the same position. And
yeah.
We just, he's great with that versatility and he's a good player. I don't know how to use him most effectively. I haven't seen that yet. So having that 3-man midfield of Trapp and Gregus ahead of Alonso, Trapp and Gregus both know what they're doing. They can get forward, and then putting Reynoso and Finley as the 2 attacking midfielders, not really wingers, just attacking midfielders who can go where they want. If one of them wants to go down the left and the other go down the right, or centrally, however they want to work that underneath Adrian Hunou, I think that could be a really successful team. So I'm starting to lean more towards a 4-3-3 being the answer, especially with concerns on the left wing and rotation there. I thought the inverted wingers tonight were a good idea, but it ended up awkward watching Ethan Finley sometimes try to cross with his left foot. He's just not going to be as effective with his left foot as he is his right because he's not the type of player to really cut in and shoot so much. Whereas Robin Lod playing on the left side is still going to bring you that. That attacking midfield dynamic needs to be worked out, especially in the lens of Minnesota United having kind of a different overall philosophy this year. Last year they were very sit back and counter, and it was fantastic. In this game tonight, I think they had 60% possession against RSL and were dominating the pace of play, breaking down a defensive block a lot, and that's more difficult than this team's doing last year. So again, opponents are adjusting. This team has changed. We can't expect the same attacking system to work every week for Minnesota United.
This is the second match in a row that Minnesota United has trailed by multiple goals late, and they've inserted Ozzy Alonso into the match. Obviously, it was 4-0, or no, it was 3-0 when he came on in the Seattle game, so maybe that is a little more out of reach. But 2-0, you're right in the thick of it, obviously, still trying to push for, to get something out of the match. And, we all love Ozzy Alonso, but he's a defensive midfielder. So how do you rationalize sort of that that substitution, specifically considering the flow of the match and what Minnesota United needed to do there, in the 74th minute?
Yeah, I think there are a few considerations. One, kind of basically could just be fatigue. We don't know what the conditioning really looks like for whoever he's replacing in either game. It can just be fresh legs in the midfield can be big. I think there's a leadership perspective too with Ozzy. We know he's a leader because he's Ozzy Alonso. Like, he's one of the most vocal players in the league. So bringing him on late can kind of provide that boost, that energy boost. We saw him flipping out at the referee. I was like, oh, yep, Ozzy's in. Like, you see that happen. You recognize that kind of intensity from him. I think tactically, what having him play so defensive can do is it can free up Jan Gregus to get even forward. It can free up whoever the other midfielder is to get even further forward. Because when you put Ozzy in, if I'm the other central midfielder, I feel more comfortable getting forward because I know Ozzy's got my back. He has my help. It's basketball defense. You can play for the steal. You can play the 3 a little bit more if you know you've got your help underneath. That's what Ozzy Alonso brings. So yeah, it's kind of counterproductive to bring on a defensive midfielder when you want to be going forward and getting that goal. But I do think it has benefits for freeing up attackers, which it's kind of, there are a lot of subs to go around, but if you can bring on one player who will give you leadership, energy, and free up your attackers, that might be more valuable than trying to make a change with one of those attackers. I think there's an argument to be made for that.
Speaking of subs, there has been one guy that Adrian Heath has brought in these first two matches, and he has made a significant impact in both the matches, and that is Justin Mcmaster. Yeah. First match, his first touch is a shot on goal, right? And then tonight, provides the assist for Robin Lode's goal to make it 2-1 and, give Minnesota United a chance to crawl back. Just what have you seen from him specifically in his game to sort of, put him in those good positions, kind of make those imps and, just kind of provide that quality he's provided, at least in the early going for Minnesota United?
Yeah, I think I'll want to rewatch to see what he's brought as far as, overall presence and impact. But that assist was a fantastic goal, and that touch, in great awareness to know that Lod was there to handle that off across. That's one of the best assists that you'll see in a kind of in the box situation. Obviously, you'll see impressive 40-yard passes that land on a dime, but fantastic assist. He's been great as an impact sub. You wonder at a certain point, well, does he deserve to start? I think this is kind of the discourse we had around Raheem Edwards during the MLS's back tournament and shortly thereafter of like, here's this guy who's come on late in games and looked really good coming on the either wing. I remember Edwards playing both late in the game. What would he bring if he started? And correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we ever really got to see that come to fruition with Edwards. So I wonder if it'll be different with Mcmaster. I think health will matter if Nico Hansen comes back to play on the left wing, what the dynamic looks like with Adrian Unu. But if I were the coach of this team right now, if looking at only the personnel available for tonight, I feel like it can't hurt to start Mcmaster on the left wing, maybe, especially just because the attack has looked so uninspired. And I think tonight they generated 1.5 expected goals. RSL got 1.4. Again, it goes to show that like XG isn't everything, because I think even if the advanced analytics say Minnesota United had the better chances, I think we can both agree that RSL was the one who really did. So the chance creation just really hasn't been there from Minnesota United, and maybe you mix something up in there personnel wise. At a certain point, it's worth a shot.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. And then 90+5, referee blows the final whistle. RSL goalkeeper David Ochoa, who's also the goalkeeper for the U.S. men's national U23 team, punts the ball into the wonder wall after he was getting heckled a little bit for running down the clock. And that starts a bit of a scuffle, shouting, pushing, shoving between the two to get, Hassani Dotson in there, Roman Metnair, Michael Boxall in there as well. Just a very, very chippy end to a disappointing match for Minnesota United.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I never like to read too much into these because we as viewers on TV, at least in my case, can't really hear what's being said on the field and all of that stuff. So it's hard to, to know what exactly was happening there. A keeper punting the ball into the supporter section, never really necessary. Hard to make a case for that. And so you like to see these kind of skirmishes, whatever you want to call them, at the end of games happening, because it shows that Minnesota United has some pride here. That they defend the fans. They don't like seeing that, but it's also hard to, from a fan perspective, to watch that happen, and you kind of wonder, well, where was that fight in the last 95 minutes? What if you would have defended your honor and defended whatever you're defending? What if you would have defended your goal like that on some counterattack defense or pushed forward a little? Like, you kind of wonder those things. So it's all interesting speculation and makes for an entertaining product. But probably, as far as locker room stuff, it's good to see that unity. Much better to be getting into a shoving match with the other team than with your own teammates, if nothing else.
All right, so let's look ahead. Next Saturday night, welcome in the expansion club, RSL, Austin FC, to Allianz Field. I think Adrian Unu, I don't know what exactly the pro was specifically for like high calls where as far as guys coming in from out of the country. So I'm assuming he'll have to go through a 10-day quarantine just because I don't really know what else there could be. So assuming that Adrian Unu would not be available for the Austin FC match, but again, we're not sure what the quarantine protocols are like for signing. But anyways, obviously some changes do need to be made just based off the fact that it's been 6-1 combined score over these first two matches. What do you want to see different for Minnesota United next Saturday night?
Well, you have to expect some quality from Austin. I see now they came back from 1-0 down to beat Colorado 3-1 with 3 second half goals on the road at altitude. So yeah, this is a quality team. So it's not a gimme by any chance. I think it's just gonna be health. I find it hard to believe we're gonna see a much better outcome from Minnesota United without getting guys like Debasi back, without getting Unu or just some sort of solution. If it's Abila up top, I don't think we'll see the same starting 11. Adrian Heath made some pretty significant changes for this one, which would seem to signify he's not too happy after that Seattle loss. Yep. We saw, switching wingers around, even if it was sort of health prompted with Agudelo starting up top. I really could see that 4-3-3 breaking out, because that kind of seems to be what Heath likes to go to as his backup option, some sort of 4-3-3. Talked about a little bit ago. I think that would be a really good option for this team. But you want to see some sort of inspiration, whether that's just better chances created, because neither of these losses have been particularly close ones. Even this one 2-1, I think it probably should have been 3-1 if we look at those chances that RSL had, and even then, it just Minnesota United never looked particularly close in this settling for those shots. So better shot selection is probably the biggest tangible change I'd hope to see. Just work it through a little bit more and not shoot from distance, because you're not going to win too many games with 2 shots on target on 23 overall.
All right, drop a chat. If you want to see anything specific change for Minnesota United as they move forward, what specifically you want to see different for the Loons as they move into their next match against the strong expansion club Austin FC next Saturday night. Right now, though, going to switch it up, have a little bit of fun. Let's get into our tweets of the match. Got 4 of them here for you. First one comes from our good buddy Reuter. Says, today is Jan Gregush's 50th MLS start for MNUFC. It's also the first time he's been subbed out before the 70th minute. I'm posting this because this is actually the first time I've ever seen the word 50th spelled out. Eli, your thoughts?
As a journalist that breaks from AP styles, I have a little bit of grievance there. That should be 50th with the numerals. Also, I love Jeff's work, but the inconsistency, they're spelling out 50th and then putting numerals 70th below. It's an unfortunate inconsistency, but 50th is a difficult word to spell, so it's a little bit of a flex. I give Jeff credit on that one. Eighth is the one that always gets me. There's an extra H in there that I never think should be there. Yeah. But also, it's a testament to what Jan Gregush brings to the team. That's kind of a crazy stat, but it shows what kind of a workhorse he is.
Consistency, he's one of the DPs on this team, and that's what you want to see is consistency. So that's what he's brought. Back to the whole 50th thing, though. I'm just picturing Jeff. I don't know if he was at the match or if he was working remote or not, but just like kind of frustrated, maybe a little bored. It's like, you know what? I got it. I know what's gonna make the people laugh, make the people smile. I'm gonna spell out 50th for all the journalism nerds out there, and that's what he did. So definitely made me reply. So good job, Jeff.
Message received.
Next comes from our good buddy Jacob Schneider. Absolutely freezing out here. I'm so cold. Note to self: dress for the weather, not the drip. Jacob, my response to this is, you were there last year. Like, media members, we actually were. It was actually awesome. It was one of the things I think I'm most grateful for is media members. Actually, we got to be one of the few that got to take in live sports last year. Mm-hmm. We got to go to Allianz Field. Now, the way the COVID protocols were set up, we were in I think they call them the loge boxes, right along the concourse there. Which, they're not temperature controlled, right? If it's cold, it's cold. If it's hot, it's hot. Yeah. So Jacob, you were in those loge boxes for those September, October matches where it was like 45 degrees. You know better. You know better.
He really should, because the last time both he and I were at a Minnesota United game before today was the home playoff game against Colorado that happened in it was around Thanksgiving, is when I was home from school, and we were in the same loge box just freezing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what Jacob expected, but also, if he's going to dress for the drip, I'm going to need to see a fit pic. Jacob, if you're still tuning in, we have to see what the drip looked like.
Also, you can dress for the drip and also dress for the weather. You can wear a nice little turtleneck. You could put maybe like the Under Armour on underneath so you can't see it. I mean, there are ways to make it happen, Jacob.
A turtleneck in like an oversized kind of overcoat. That's very drippy. You get a little chain in there, and it's very drippy. Well, we can have a whole conversation. We'll make another podcast, the drip special.
The drip special. There you go. Or maybe like a pea coat. Come on, Jacob.
Ooh, I like it. We're designing Jacob's drip for him from now on. We pick out Jacob's outfits.
There you go. That'll be a reoccurring segment. Let's pick out what Jacob wears in the Minnesota United games. Next, from E Pluribus Lunum, Eli, I believe you were the one to tweet this out, and unfortunately, it might be a little bit difficult to see. At Kevin Molino in the search bar, how to get your ex back.
Yeah. A Google search, thankfully, I've never had to make before. I'll be honest, but I had to make it tonight because Minnesota United needs Kevin Molino. They're missing him so much in the attack with his dribbling and his chemistry with Reyno. So it's hard to watch. So
they need
I hope
quality and chemistry, and that's honestly one thing that Kevin Molino embodied was all three of those, especially with a guy like Reynoso who can make things happen. So.
Absolutely. If you're Adrian Heath, you have to hope that Kevin's doing well. But if you see him from across the bar one of these nights, you might just go over and say hi and see if he feels the same way.
Or just maybe shoot him a text, let him know like, hey, and then hope he looks up.
Hey, you up, and leave it at that.
Anyways, final one, and this is going to take me into a tangent here. Valley Sports North, due to technical difficulty, tonight's Minnesota United game is unavailable on Fox Sports Go. The game can be seen on the CW Twin Cities or DirecTV channel 668-. We apologize for the inconvenience. This tweet would have been great at about 7 o'clock. If you look at the timestamp here, 8:43 p.m. I believe we were in the 81st minute of the match when this tweet was sent out. Now, I was one of the victims of this technical difficulty. I don't have cable. I proudly say that my fiance and I bummed her parents' cable login info to be able to stream these games, and obviously was not able to do so due to these technical difficulties. So what did I have to do? I had to get my trusty Surfshark VPN out, put the game on my phone. You can't cast games to televisions if it's on VPN. So my viewing experience for this game was watching it on my phone, propped up at my work desk in my basement, while also having my computer there for Twitter and all that good stuff, the Google Doc and all that. So it was just not a stellar viewing experience, and hopefully it changes, because that was not good.
Yeah, I can't relate. My ESPN Plus stream worked fantastic. I'm out of market. I go to school in Missouri, so I'm out of the blackout region. So just ESPN Plus it, and we chilling.
All right, I'm gonna put a shameless plug in here.
Oh, there we
Surfshark.
go.
Surfshark.deal/10K gets you 81% off VPN service. That's just $249 per month. So if you're in the same situation as me and you don't want that to happen to you again, consider that. Surfshark.deals/10K to get 81% off your VPN service. All right, Eli, any final thoughts before we skedaddle on out of here? And hopefully I can get up the correct overlay. There we go.
Well, Jeremy, I'd like to actually read a tweet that I saw on Twitter that I think sums this up pretty well. And I'll leave my final thoughts with just that tweet. It's from Andrew at ANDLOVG, a frequenter of Minnesota United Twitter. Absolutely. There's no punctuation at the end of this tweet, so I'm going to read it rather monotone and drab, and that's very intentional. The tweet is simply, does Minnesota United practice individually or at the same time?
It's a great question based off what we saw tonight, right? It's honestly kind of a valid question.
Those are the questions that I think the fans are asking after tonight, and I think that sums up what we've seen pretty succinctly.
All right. Well, it's been an hour, Eli. It's been it's been fun to talk to you again. Unfortunately, circumstances dictate that we talk about the Minnesota United loss, but hopefully the next time we get you on one of these post-loop streams, we're able to talk about a win and talk about something happy and talk about the good, great quality that Adrian Unu, Emmanuel Reynoso, and co are providing to Minnesota United and the turnaround that they have provided after that 0-2 start.
Absolutely. When I come back on, I want to be recanting everything I said. I want to be talking about a Chase Gasper masterclass. Just, everything going right in the attack. Reynoso dribbling enough for him and Molino, or Kevin Molino, to be back. Really looking forward to that. Minnesota reunited. Oh, the branding is already there. It's just a beautiful thing. I'm manifesting it now. God. But as always, happy to be on. Hopefully I'm back for a bit more positive conversation at some point.
Yeah, just not mentioning there though that Kevin Molino is out 6 to 8 weeks with a leg issue. So there's that too.
It's okay. He needs time to find himself. Minnesota United needs time to find themselves. They'll both come back together that much more mature, having learned from the experience. This is how it goes.
He's down on his luck. Minnesota United's down on their luck. What a perfect time to come back together, right?
Literally can see zero barriers between this happening again. Don't let his
distance
for another team or anything.
This is like the beginning of a rom-com when you see two individuals and they just got broken up with, both of them. They're eating pints of ice cream on the couch, watching sad movies. It's right before they come together, and I feel like we're at that spot.
Exactly. I can just see it right now. Kevin Molino sitting on his couch with the pint of ice cream, sad, watching Reynoso dribble in circles by himself tonight. Like, how can you not want that to get back together?
Oh man! All right, Eli Hoff, E Pluribus, the man-eater down at the University of Missouri. Follow him on Twitter at by Eli Hoff. Eli, thank you, man. Again, wish we were talking about something a little more upbeat, a little more happy, but a pleasure to talk to you as always.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, Jeremy. Stay warm up there. Don't drip too hard.
I'll try not to, but it's hard for me. I drip hard all the time.
Can't turn it off. Can't turn it off. We'll see you, Jeremy.
Bye, guys. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, and we'll catch you after the next game on Post Loons. Bye-bye.